Hello, my name is Max Taylor. I am a member of the Hopi tribe from the village of Shmopavi on the Hopi Reservation. I wish I was there in person to do this presentation, but here it goes. It has been a passion of mine for many years and enabled me through my career in natural resources as a ranger, water resource technician, range management technician, and soil conservationist, and as a rancher to enhance my knowledge of the plants and the Hopi lands. This presentation will give a short overview of Hopi ethnobotany, in particular edible plants and some of their uses. Through the knowledge I have gained, it has been important for me to share this with our Hopi people to help revive this very important knowledge that we are slowly losing. Here are a few of the photos of me on my presentations. I've conducted and some field trips out to identify plants, collect and harvest, and to prepare a meal, and only with a few people that I can really trust, because some people will return soon after they harvest and overharvest the plants. So here are some of the pictures of me doing my presentations to the public and also um, working with other organizations like the Extension Service. And then I'll do some of the media as well. In learning about these plants, I have found that these little bits of information is very helpful, and I share this with my audience. Here are some important informations to know which will help you find and pick these plants. As you know, all these plants grow at different times and different seasons. So seasons, soils, and physical plants and moisture are very important. Number one, seasons. All of these plants grow in different seasons, whether it's early spring, early summer, late summer, and fall. And soils are also very important. Some of these plants like to grow in sandy soils, and then sandy loam, and clay loam, and also in clay. And then the plant type. This is the most important part in collecting these plants, knowing these plants. You need to be sure to know whether it's an annual, a biennial, or perennial. Because annuals and biennials are seed dependent, they need to be collected and not harvest the whole thing because they are seed dependent. Excuse me. The perennial plants can be over harvested. They are hardy and can withstand heavy harvesting. And one of the most important parts of this is also your moisture. If you get early, if you get good winter moisture, you are ensured to get a good harvest early in the spring. And then if you get late rains, and then you can have more harvest throughout the season. So those two moistures are very important. Okay. As I mentioned in the slide before this one, knowing the times of season these plants grow is very important for a successful harvest. And here are some plants that you can find in the early spring. Okay, this slide here, I have I have some photos here. The first one is Allium macropetellum, which is a wild onion, and then the second photo is Cymopteris. It's either Frenulari or Greenii. They're both um, from the same family and the carrot family, and it's also used as wild parsley. And then there's Lygodasmia grandiflora, which is a really inconspicuous little plant that we use for a spinach. And then you get the Atriplex powelli, which is an annual saltweed that is collected early spring. And then there's another Atriplex species that's perennial, which is Atriplex convertifolia. Um, Both of these two grow in clay soils, heavy clay soils, so that's where you'll find them. And the last plant I have here is Stanleya albescens, which is a winter or early spring annual that likes to grow in heavy clay soil as well. And this plant is from the broccoli family. So these are the early spring plants. And then you move on to early summer. Then you come up to these plants, the Monarda pectinata, which is a mint. This plant grows in kind of depressions where water settles, or a lot of times we go collect around Flagstaff up again, kind of in low depression areas. And then you have Cleome cerulata. It's a Rocky Mountain bee plant. This plant likes to grow in sandier soils and also a little bit sandy loam type soils, and it's a spinach that we prepare. And then you have Paleominta in Cana, which is a mint bush. It's a perennial plant that grows in heavy, deep sand dunes. And you can use this as a spice early in the season. And as it matures and flowers, then you can later pick it and collect it and use it for tea. And then you have the Portulaca oleracea. This plant is a really good plant to collect if you have a good spring moisture and summer. And this will grow pretty much all over the place. And if you do have a garden and irrigate, it'll usually pop up. And so it's a readily available plant. And the next one is Stanleya pinnata. This plant is also used for spinach, and it's from the mustard family. It grows up along the sides of the cliffs or in some of the Manco shale, which is kind of deep clay, heavy clay. And then the yucca angustissima, the yucca plant, narrow-leaf yucca. This plant produces flower stalks that is edible, and then later on, the flower bulbs will turn into little melon-type fruits that you can harvest and also cook like you do zucchini. So those are your early summer plants. And then you go into late summer where you have the Solanum jamesii, which is a wild potato. This plant likes to grow in floodplains. That's where I find them. And then you have Amaranthus acanthochiton. This plant is a real succulent plant, and it only grows during really heavy monsoons late in the summer. And they have a real short season, so you have to collect them because when they do dry out, they're just as hard as tumbleweed and real stickery. And then you have the Ribes inebrians. We don't have very much berry bushes out on Hopi, but this is only one of the few berries that we have that the kids like to go out and pick. And then also the wildlife really enjoy it, so there's a little competition. And then you have the Spirabilis aroides. Some of these grass species were very important to our ancestors back in the day, but because we have other grains now like wheat, we tend to forget about these grasses. But I've been collecting the seed and grinding up into a meal and hoping to make either some kind of pudding or bread out of it. So I'm just studying this plant right now. And we also have teas that we make out of these plants, and here are two of them. There's Telesperma subnudum and Telesperma megapotamicum. Both of these plants grow in sandy soils and as well as sandy loam, and both of these are perennial. So overharvesting is not a problem for these plants, but it's best to not pull out the whole root, but just break them at the base. So these are the late summer plants. And then you go into fall. In the fall, you have the prickly pears that will produce the fruit, and those are good to harvest. And you can eat them right off the plant, or you can prepare it into jelly. And then you have the Pinus edulis, the pinon pine. Pinions are kind of far in between, maybe every 5 years at times, but also really moisture dependent. If you get good winter moisture, then you can have pinions. And the other plant would be your yucca bacara. Yucca bacara produces these fruit that will ripen into really sweet fruit. And we you can either bake them and store the fruit or eat them there, or you can eat them raw as well. Because when they do ripen, they are very sweet. And those are your fall plants. Um, Here's an example of what I present to my general Hopi audience when I do my presentations. This plant I have here is Stanleya albescens. It is from the mustard family and it's an annual. This plant comes up really early in the spring and can be found in clay soil types and we use it as a spinach. And as you look at this slides, this is the format that I use. I put the Latin name up on top. That's the Stanlea albescens, and then the English common name, desert plume, and then the Hopi name, Ishe. And I'll kind of describe this plant to the audience, telling like this is from the broccoli family, and it's you can boil it up into spinach and add little meat flavoring into it. It's very good. And here is my second example, Cymopteris bulbosus. It's a perennial root plant that comes out very early spring in heavy clay soils, and you can find it in clay loam also. But generally, you would find it in the Manco shale. So that's a really heavy clay. Um, it's from the carrot family, and after the outer bark is removed, it can be eaten fresh, or you can use it in a variety of ways. But this, as kids, we used to go out and harvest this thing. As soon as we get off the bus, we'd be down below the cliffs collecting these plants. So every little kid knows this plant on Hopi. A harvesting, knowing the location, soil types, time of the season is important to know when to harvest and where to find them. When picking annuals, always leave some plants behind to mature and produce seeds. These plants are seed dependent for reproductions. Perennial plants are strong plants and can withstand heavy harvesting. Um, in this slide, I have my two sisters out collecting annual saltweed at one season. So that's what people look like when they're out harvesting. And then again, you have the amaranthus, and then also you have a bowl of wild potatoes that I've harvested. And then I have another picture here with the alkali saccatone seeds that I've collected. And the last one is the narrow leaf yucca fruit, and then the flower. Okay, thank you. And cleaning and processing. One thing I strongly emphasize to my audience is always be mindful of how much you pick. Take only what is needed. Cleaning and preparing can be a lot of work. Only pick how much you can handle. Don't be wasteful. I've um, I've seen people over harvest and not finish with the cleaning process, and I see it sometimes they throw it out because maybe it's gone bad. So I always try to really emphasize that collect only what you can manage to work. Here you have some mint, and then you have some Opterus greeny that some we can use for wild parsley, and it's also a spice for your stews. Then you have the Sendea pineta that's ready for to be boiled into a stew. And then you have a ground alkali secatone seeds there in the side. And I'm not really sure what those other ones, but the last picture is of the wild native tobacco that is also harvested and dried and stored. Okay, how to collect seeds. All these plants produce seeds, and some of these seed plants you can collect, and you can start your own harvesting area, or you can also start landscaping with it along your yards or wherever you want to. So it's a little process, but it can be done, and you can share the seeds with other people too that maybe want to start their own little crop. The preservation of these plants. A lot of the plants you collect can be dried and stored for future use. This was how our ancestors stored their harvest. However, now with the refrigeration, you can parboil a lot of these plants and freeze them for later use. The way I preserve my plants is I usually clean the plants. I'll lay them out in a cool, dark place and let them dry out. Then I can store them in bags to, just to store again in a cool, dry place. But some of these plants, like some of the spinach plants, I can parboil and put them in baggies and store them for the winter or whenever I need to use them. Cooking to harvest. I have a couple of photos here of the plants that I've prepared. Amaranthus akin to chitin. Like I said, it can be boiled with bits of bacon or spam. Really tasty, really, really good. And another plant that I have here is Paleominta incana, which is a mint. Um, in Hopi, we boil that with your blue cornmeal. It's basically just pork blue cornmeal boiled with hot water and adding in the mint, and that makes for a really good breakfast. And that kind of covers my presentation. And here are just some good photos again of the plants I've talked about. The one I didn't really talk about is the little yellow one, which is Pectus angustifolia, which is another one that is used as a spice. So enjoy what nature offers you. Thank you very much. Thank you.